On today's podcast, we're talking all about home inspections, how to use them, how to benefit from them, and how to find a good home inspector if you're facing foreclosure. Hey, Foreclosure Fix family, and welcome to another episode of the Foreclosure Fix podcast, where our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. I'm your host, DJ Olojo, and if that mission resonates with you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, or share our content with someone who you know can benefit, or better yet, pick up a copy of our latest book called The Foreclosure Fix, 12 Proven Steps to Beat the Bank, Escape Foreclosure, and Turn Your Property into a Profitable Asset. On today's podcast, we are talking all about home inspections. And you may be asking yourself this question, DJ, what does home inspections have to do with me and my house when I'm facing foreclosure? Well, to be honest with you, the home inspection and your foreclosure are not directly related. However, if you are considering selling your house, the condition of your property is so important because that's going to dictate how much money you get back in your pocket. Yes, that property condition is so huge and it really impacts the value of your property. Oftentimes, I talk to homeowners who say, I'm going to sell my house. Zillow or Trulia or Redfin says my house is worth $250,000. And then first thing I always ask them is, what's the condition? Well, it needs work. It's a little dated and the property condition is not that good. It's not as good as the renovated flip that they just did next door. Well, guess what? You're not going to get that $250,000. You're going to get way less because whoever buys the property is going to want discounts for the things that need to be remedied. So that being said, we're talking all about that today. We're talking about what to do if you get a bad inspection report on your property from a potential buyer, how to maybe position your property to sell the best, and what things that you can do to put yourself in the best possible situation, even if you don't have the financial means to do so. That being said, I do need to let you know that if you have picked up a copy of the Foreclosure Fix book, inside the book, there is a property condition assessment that you can use to really evaluate the condition of your property, to be able to understand how good your property is in comparison to other properties that may be on the market selling right now. So first things first, what is a home inspection, right? That can be ambiguous. Is it just, the buyer walking through the house and saying, oh, I don't like the color of the walls, I don't like the color of the curtains and things like that? No, a home inspection is when you have a certified home inspector come through the property and they are looking to pick apart the property. And what I mean by pick apart the property, they don't really care about the cosmetics. They don't care about what color the walls are painted. They're looking for structural issues. They're looking at the mechanicals. They're looking at the electrical. They're looking at the roof. They're looking at the foundation. They're looking at those big ticket items that are going to cause the homeowner a problem. And so what happens is a certified home inspector walks through the entire property and they begin just to test everything. And at the end of their inspection, they provide a comprehensive and detailed report. Now, when you say they're testing everything, what do you mean by testing? They're testing everything. They're going through, they're opening every window or trying to open every window. They should be opening and closing every door. They're testing every faucet, every toilet. They're looking at the electrical panel, taking off the cover, making sure there are no double tap wires and making sure that the panel is grounded. They're looking to see what type of breakers you have. They're testing your light switches. They're testing your outlets. They're going through, testing your stove. They're seeing if the HVAC is working. They're seeing that the HVAC is not just working, but it's blowing out the right temperature. And so they have temperature gauges. They're looking at the pressure on the water line to see if it's overpressurized or if it's under pressurized. They're looking at the roof to see if the roof needs to be replaced. They are looking at the siding. They're looking at the foundation. Are there any cracks? Are there any other issues and things like that? And so they're going through and they're just basically doing a whole physical examination on your home. And the reason is because that buyer wants that information so they can know what they're walking into. At the end of the home inspection, the inspector provides a report, and that report details kind of items they found, and they pretty much break them down into like red, yellow, green. So items that are green are good to go. They're in good condition. Items that are yellow are things that may cause the homeowner problems in the very near future. And items that are red are typically those items that need to be addressed immediately. And so the home inspector provides that document, and then a negotiation begins between the buyer of the home and the seller of the home. And so if you are the seller of the home, which most people who may be facing foreclosure are, then the buyer may come back and say, hey, I want you to fix these items. And in that scenario, if you come back and say, I'm not fixing anything, that buyer may walk away. And the reason I give you that context is because oftentimes when we think about real estate transactions, we think about one negotiation. I wanted $300,000 for my house. You came and you provided me an offer for $295,000. I agreed to that price, and now we're done. Let's go. That's not the way real estate works. Real estate transactions are a million different negotiations. They just come at different times. Everything from purchase price to the escrow agent or closing attorney to the number of days I get to inspect the property and have my due diligence. And so now that I have my due diligence, what do I want you to do as part of my due diligence? And what I mean by that is that if you get an inspection report and the inspection report is really bad, there are just numerous things that need to be addressed. There are two ways to handle that. Sometimes a buyer may say, hey, I want you to give me a certain amount of money to address these issues. And then another buyer may say, I want you to go ahead and fix all these issues because I don't deal with contractors. But you as a homeowner may say, I don't have any contractors who can do all this stuff. And so then there's a delicate dance that goes back and forth between you and the buyer. And so this is where your real estate agents are so important. So just a shout out, if you do not have a good, competent real estate agent, you definitely want to work with one if you are considering selling your house on the open market. It is so important that you get good representation. Oftentimes people think that they're saving themselves a lot of money by not using a real estate agent. And I know that their compensation is variable, but at the end of the day, a good real estate agent can save you tons of money and make you tons of money. And so just keep that in mind before you just say, no, I want to sell it as is. If you are going to sell it as is and you're going to sell it yourself, I do have some recommendations for you before the end of the podcast. So definitely stay tuned because I'm going to break those items out as to how you approach as is sale as a homeowner. So you and the buyer are doing this delicate dance back and forth. And it's not you directly talking with the buyer unless you're unrepresented. It's probably both agents talking to each other, doing that delicate dance. And as a result, you all figure out what's going to happen. Either that buyer is going to take your offer of maybe giving some more money off or maybe making some of the repairs, or they're going to walk away and say, hey, this just is not the house for me. It's just too much work, right? And so at the end of the day, that is a negotiation, and you have to have that delicate dance back and forth in order to get to a position that you want. Now, the reason I give you that context is because there are different ways that people negotiate. Recently, I've had some experiences over the last couple weeks where different agents have negotiated different ways. And so I want to give you kind of 4 different properties that we are working through or have worked through in the last couple weeks and the experiences that I had on each one and what made the negotiation so funny, right? So property number 1, property's under contract and they do their home inspection. And their home inspection has some minor items, basically move the water heater, repair a column, and basically fix one outlet. So you got maybe 3 or 4 major items, not even major, 3 or 4 items where the total cost of these items are probably $1,000 to fix. But the real estate agent came back and said they wanted $10,000 in closing costs for us to move forward. Our realtor basically went back to that agent and said, hey, we'll pass. We're not doing that. We'll fix the items and we can move forward. And guess what? They accepted that. So we spent $1,000 fixing the items, went to closing, and things were fine. But again, in these scenarios, I'm pointing out that the good real estate agent for the buyer is trying to get their client the best deal possible. And so guess what? If they can get $10,000, they're going to try to get $10,000. And so you can't look at these negotiations as things where they are malicious. Each person is trying to get the best deal for their client. And that's so important. You have to remember that these negotiations are not things meant to make you feel bad or harm you, but each person is trying to get the best deal for their client. And that is what their goal is. And so take your own kind of personal opinions out of it because the negotiation is not malicious. It's just one of those things where everybody is trying to get the best for each party they represent. The next situation, same thing. We were under contract, home inspection came through, and the home inspection had maybe about 5 or 6 items, nothing major, right? All the systems were new, the property was in good condition, but there were minor things like, one outlet need to be swapped out. Maybe a GFI wasn't working, maybe a couple windows because the house was older, maybe needed like new sashes, not new sashes, but new balances, because when you rolled the window up, it wouldn't stay up. And then after that, that was pretty much it. But this agent said her client's fine with the condition and didn't do anything. And so we were like, perfect, let's just move on to closing. And that property closed. So in that scenario, that agent probably could have requested that we make those repairs, but I think her buyer knew they were getting a good deal on the property and didn't want to rock the boat. And so they just said, hey, we can fix those items ourselves when we move in. And that's what they did. All right. The next property, we were under contract, and we're still under contract, actually, because this is actually a live deal that's going on right now. And the buyer basically saw the house, liked the house, wanted to buy the house. They got a home inspection. The home inspection was quite minimal. A couple minor issues, maybe, add a new handrail to the deck steps that were going down, like 3 little steps, and a couple really small cosmetic issues. But in this scenario, the buyer said, hey, I also want you to replace all the windows. And so this is where it gets to be really interesting, because when they saw the house, they saw the windows that were there. They saw they were single pane windows, but now they want to have all the windows replaced. And they got a quote to replace those windows. And the quote was around $11,000. And so their agent asked for $11,000 plus numerous repairs on the property. And in this scenario, what do you do? And so the sellers of the house basically said, hey, you saw the windows when you came to the property. We don't really feel that it's fair that you should ask us to now change all the windows. We had other offers and we could have accepted one of those other offers. And so they basically agreed to kind of meet them in the middle. They gave them some closing cost concessions and they agreed to, move forward. And the reason why is because they didn't want to terminate the deal and go back on the market and reset. And so that agent kind of played her cards well, because she basically was able to get some closing cost concessions when her offer didn't really have closing costs in the first place. Now, the crazy part of this story is that we were at the end of due diligence and they were doing a termite inspection on the property. And with a termite inspection, that's different than a home inspection, because basically in Georgia, we have termites, and you are going and having a pest control company, a licensed pest control company, look to see if there are any termite issues around the property. And this property had a termite bond. And so basically a termite bond is when a pest control company comes out and they spray the property and ensure that there's no active termites and things like that. They give you a report, and that report is used as you move forward. Fast forward, I guess between the time the termite bond was issued and this date, termites appeared. And so now they are there and they're saying, hey, we also have termites. And this is after they've already negotiated. And then the final kicker with this property is that there was a small leak on the chimney. And it was a really like a pinhole type leak. But in Georgia, we've gotten a lot of rain the last couple of days because the hurricane that's come up through Florida is impacting us. And so we've had like 3 days of straight rain. And so that small little pin leak is actually kind of showing that water is undefeated. And as a result, there was water coming into the garage. So while the termite inspector was there doing his termite inspection, he called the agent and told the agent, like, hey, there's basically water coming from the ceiling in the garage and it's coming down the wall, and you need to get somebody here ASAP. So as a result, they went to the property, found that leak, and now they are, have to repair that as well. Now you may say, dang, what's going on with this property? Is it in poor condition? No, the property is fully renovated. But as a result, there's just houses, and houses always have issues. What you have to remember about properties is that they are almost like living, breathing microorganisms, right? That a house has all these different parts. And if you're not keeping up with the house and you're not there every day and no one's living in the house, you just won't catch some of these things because the house is vacant. And so as a result, this is a wild and crazy story just because of the fact that now that buyer of the house wants to extend due diligence, which is totally normal, and go see the leak for herself to make sure that she's not signing up for a problem. Ultimately, I'm giving you these examples of stories because I want you to understand that one, they're normal, but number two, that real estate is always about continuous negotiation. And so if you're facing foreclosure and you decide to sell your house, do not necessarily put all your emotions into it. I know this is a very stressful situation and it may be something that you don't want to do. That's why I always recommend you get a third party to help you. But if you're doing it yourself, you need to make sure that people going back and forth negotiating is just part of a transaction and it's not intended to be malicious towards you. All right, so if you said, hey, DJ, this inspection stuff is cool. I can handle that. I'm not worried about that. I want to sell the property sold as is. I don't want to do anything. I don't care. I want people just to give me the price that I want. How do I go about doing that? I always talk about the best way to do this is to have multiple investors come through your house. If you're facing foreclosure, you've probably had investors mail you, email you, call you, text you, try to reach out to you in some way, shape, or form. I always recommend that you save those cards, save those letters, save those text messages for when you're ready to sell. And then call all of them. And yes, I mean call every single one of them and set up a time for all of them to come through and make you an offer. And the reason I say that is because investors are different. Each investor has their own buy box, has their own criteria, has their own method of dealing with property. One investor can walk through your house and say there's $75,000 of work. Another one can say there's $150,000 of work, and another one can come through and say there's $25,000 of work. It really all depends on what their goal is for the property. Maybe they want to rent it. Maybe they're going to knock over the property and just want the land or the dirt. Maybe they're going to do a full renovation and add some square footage or something like that. And so they're looking at different comparables. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter to you. What matters to you is how much they're willing to give you, how much you're going to get in your pocket when it's all said and done. And so as a result, if you are considering selling your house to an investor and you're saying, hey, I'm selling it as is, call every single investor that's reached out to you. Set up a time for them to come through. If you're strategic, try to get them all there on the same day, around the same time. Let them bump into each other. Let them see the house and let them see that there's competition so everybody can sharpen their pencil and give you the best possible offer. And then as a result, see where the offers come in. I just toured a house yesterday and, my offer on the house was $175,000. It needed a decent amount of work. It was in poor condition. It needed a new roof. It needed trees to be taken down around the property. And at the end of the day, it just was a property that just needed a good amount of work. However, the seller of the property, and this is an estate property, so the actual owner of the property is deceased, and so it's the executor of the estate who's handling it, told me that they had offers all the way up to about $250,000. So they literally had offers $75,000 higher than my offer. And I was thinking in my head about how was this person going to make any money on the property? But again, their criteria may be different. They're willing to pay a premium because of the fact that they want that property in the same area as their other properties. And so as a result, you can't compete with that. You can't compete with someone who is willing to pay more. And it's not your job as a seller to worry about what their motive is. Your job is to worry about how much they're willing to give you. And so if you are selling your property as is and you're doing it yourself, call back every investor who's reached out to you, get them all there around the same time on the same day, field their offers, and pick which one is the best. And make sure you're not selling to somebody who's going to play around, who's going to waste your time. Make sure they have good earnest money and that they're putting down not just $100 or something like that. They need to put down multiple thousands of dollars to make sure that they can buy the property from you. And so do not be deceived or played by people who are just looking to be tire kickers. You want someone who's going to take down your property, do the right things, and do the right things by you as the homeowner, and do the right things to get you to the closing table, because this is a stressful situation and you don't want you to find yourself facing foreclosure and not making it to the closing table because someone who had no real intention to buy your property played around your livelihood. That being said, there's a couple other things I want to tell you is if you are considering selling your house, definitely, as I've always told you on this podcast, get a broker's price opinion for your property. Now, you don't have to use a broker to list it or market it, but just have a couple come through and give you their opinion. The last thing I'll tell you is that details matter when you're selling your home. And what I mean by details matter, I recently am working on a deal right now where the owner probably could have got $20,000 more for the property if they would have spent, maybe $10,000 cleaning out the property. And what I mean by that is that this house is full of furniture, junk. It smells like, dog and cat. And it's just really, really tough to walk through it. So when you walk through it, you need to put on almost like a hazmat suit, right? You have to sign a disclosure letting you know that, walking in this house may be dangerous. And so when we walk through the house, obviously we know it was probably going to cost us anywhere between, $8,000 and $10,000 just to get all the stuff out the house. But because we don't know what's behind the stuff, we actually estimated in our budget $20,000 because we just had to assume that once we moved all the stuff out, there were going to be more problems. However, if this seller would have paid a company to move all the junk out, they probably could have gotten higher offers because one, more people would have been willing to enter the house and see the property. And then the other thing is that they also would have been in a situation where they could have easily shown everybody that, hey, the house doesn't have any additional problems besides all this stuff. And so when people can't see things, they're going to always place a bigger premium on what the repair is going to cost. So if I can see that the kitchen's dilapidated, I know how much a kitchen costs. But if I can't see the kitchen and I can't even get into the kitchen, well, I'm going to assume the worst and maybe add another zero to the price or line item just because I'm worried that it may be something really, really bad. And so just keep that in mind. The cleaner you can make your house, the more junk you can remove, the higher your offers are going to be. That being said, that brings us to my favorite part of the podcast, which is our Bowtie Round. It's where you, our listeners, get to tie one on with your host, DJ Olojo. The B in Bowtie Round stands for my best advice for somebody facing a foreclosure. The O stands for one thing I'm grateful for. The W stands for my wildest or most interesting foreclosure-related story. My best advice is if you are buying a house, get a home inspection. If you are selling a house, be prepared to review and negotiate when someone brings you the home inspection they receive. The one thing I'm grateful for, I'm actually grateful for home inspectors. They have been a pain in my side before, for sure, because I've gotten some home inspections and I'm like, come on, you are just joking, right? You got to be kidding me, the items that you're finding. But at the same time, I understand that they provide a great service to people who don't have experience in the real estate environment. People don't know all the different details of a home, and having somebody who does this all day, every day, go through and look at the house and make sure that they're buying a good thing, it's very, very important. I liken it to like a good mechanic when you're buying a car, where it's like, okay, hey, yeah, you may need some new tires, but the engine and transmission are great. Well, I can afford new tires. I can put a price on that, but I can't afford to replace the engine and transmission. And so I'm happy that someone's checking it out for me. That's the same way I feel about home inspectors. All right. My wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story this week comes from a deal that I've been telling you all about for a little while, where basically their balance on their mortgage was super low, but they basically racked up, tons of legal fees as a result of playing that game that I always tell you not to play when you're facing foreclosure. They've been, kicking the can down the road, not responding, and basically trying to find all these legal petitions. And so now, although their mortgage payoff is, probably only $8,000, they've racked up about $20,000 on legal fees. And so now they owe about $30,000 when all they had to do was really pay $8,000. And so it's coming down to the wire. It's been multiple years going back and forth. And now this family is asking if we could negotiate. Can they do a payment plan? Can they, modify the loan? And we're all looking like, excuse me, now you want to modify after multiple years? And the bank is saying, no, we want all our money. And if you don't give us all our money, we're taking the house to foreclosure. So they're scrambling. They're trying to refi. They're trying to figure it all out. And at the end of the day, this story is just one of those stories that goes to show that the bank gets frustrated. They could have paid $8,000, or they could have put a plan together 3 years ago to pay $8,000 over the course of just, a couple years. And they want to fight. They want to act like they didn't have the debt. They want to pay their own attorney, whatever they paid that attorney, multiple thousands of dollars to try to fight. And as a result, they've just racked up big legal bills for themselves and everybody. So instead of paying $8,000, they probably may end up paying $50,000 or losing their house, because if they paid their attorney $20,000 and they still owe our side $30,000, then, you're at $50,000 when you just could have paid $8,000. And so as a result, that story just highlights the fact that if you know you owe the debt, and it's not a situation where like it's past the statute of limitations, or it's an illegal debt where you never signed your name and it's fraudulent. But if you know you took out the loan, you got to be woman enough or man enough to figure out how you pay it back or how you renegotiate that commitment that you made. And so again, That story is one that just highlights what happens when the bank says, no, I'm not willing to negotiate anymore. You pay me or I'm taking the house. Hey, that concludes our podcast. If the mission to help 1 million homeowners resonates with you, do me a favor, like, subscribe, or share our content with someone who you know can benefit. Or better yet, get them a copy of our latest book called The Foreclosure Fix. 12 proven steps to beat the bank, escape foreclosure, and turn your property into a profitable asset. As always, I'm DJ Olojo. I love you. God bless you. I'll see you soon. The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.